Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film So Big from 1932. Now, this is continuing my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can within the year of 2013. So Big is based on a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel from 1924 written by Edna Ferber. There are 3 film versions of So Big. The first version was a silent version. It was made in 1924. It starred Colleen Moore. And this film, this 1932 film, is the second version. The third version is from 1953. It was directed by Robert Weiss, who's another pretty good director, and stars Jane Wyman. This is the 1932 version. Obviously, it's directed by Wild Bill Wellman, and it stars Barbara Stanwyck in the lead role of Selina Peake. Now, Selina Peake, her father's kind of a gambler. He's kind of a big shot guy. She and him live in a boarding house together, and when she's older he's killed and she leaves her penniless. And when she's penniless, one of her friends finds her a job as a school teacher in a Dutch community, mostly a Dutch farming community, and she becomes a school teacher there and kind of catches the eye of this farmer Purvis, and they marry and have a child, Dirk, and she nicknames him So Big. And every time she's like, "How big is my boy? I'm so big." You know, she always does that. It kind of reminds me of when I was a kid, because when you're a kid, you want to be bigger. That was always a big thing. Like, I want to be like a big boy when I'm like 3 or 4. That really meant something to me. So that I can relate to. Purvis dies, and she takes control of the farm and grows asparagus, and that asparagus makes her very rich. And then her son grows up and becomes an architect, somewhat become what her father was in a weird way. And this film takes on a lot in its short time span. In about 81 minutes, it takes on a lot. I mean, this is the kind of story you expect from a big epic, because you go from her as a little girl to being an older woman, and her whole life and all the struggles, and seeing how hard it is to be on a farm, and how, you know, Purvis wasn't running the farm very well, so she had to come in after he died and change how they did irrigation. Even though it was tough to have asparagus at first, how it had these big rewards for her, and, you know, raising a son at the same time, and trying to sell her crops even though, you know, people were against her doing that by herself. But her husband's dead, so I don't understand what she's supposed to do, just starve because of social norms. It's an interesting film just because I think this film probably, and most likely, and I haven't read the book, but just judging by the film I saw of So Big, I feel like this could be like a 3-hour epic film, like a Giant or something. A story like this is more accustomed to something like that. But So Big isn't like that. So Big is quick. It's a 30s film. It's using a 30s film length. I don't necessarily think it deserves that length, because some things are just kind of assumed. You know, when Purvis dies, they just kind of tell you in the next scene. There's no big death scene. They don't have a scene where the asparagus is really taking off and they're suddenly very successful. It's just like, then they're very successful all of a sudden. Part of me likes that, part of me doesn't, because I kind of like when you go through it with the characters. Instead, it's like you're kind of almost stopping in on them at various points in their lives. Like they're kind of a family member, a distant family member who you know because you're family, but you don't know that well. You know, so you're semi-experiencing it, but are you really? I read this blog, and I've read it a couple times because they do this blog. It's called Movie Classics. It's written by this woman, Judy. I'm actually going to link to it in this video because I quite like the blog, and I think she did a good review of So Big. And she mentions in her review, she brings up and how Wellman really used Stanwyck in his films. And I think often when Wellman used Stanwyck in his films, he's placing her against type. She's not playing, like, I guess, the cliche of what we think of Barbara Stanwyck. She says this: he seemed to like casting her as someone who can't be defeated, however dire her situation might be, but carries on working tirelessly and hoping against hope. I think that's really true. That's really what he's doing with Barbara Stanwyck. Is in Purchase Price, it's like against all odds, and she becomes kind of, she's not really a working class girl, and she becomes a working class girl. This and Purchase Price are very similar. I think Night Nurse has it as well, but Night Nurse isn't as similar as So Big and Purchase Price. It's just that she overcomes these odds, and, you know, you really go through a character arc with her, and you really see her, you know, become a different person, and how, like, the farm work kind of wears her down, especially in this film. This film makes working on the farm look tragic and terrible and just draining. She stays with this one family at the beginning called the Poole family. The mother who's there is only just about 30, and she looks like she's 50 because she's so run down. She eventually dies because she just doesn't have a break. You know, she's always constantly working, and she's just constantly tired and looks worn down. You can really see how it drains everyone on the farm. Everyone looks far older than they probably are, and when you get to when Barbara Stanwyck's older, she looks like life has been literally like drained out of her. She doesn't just look like she's older, she looks like she just doesn't have any energy, like there's not much left. There's a young man in this film who, the son of the family she lives with, Ralph Poole, and he has to stop learning. You know, he really likes reading, he's trying to study as much as he can, but he can't because they need him to work on the farm. How hard it is to work on a farm, how much you have to really do on a farm, and how sacrificing it really is and was. I mean, this isn't during the Depression, this takes place from about the 1880s till I guess like the 20s, showing like what it was like on a farm and how, you know, some people like her husband Purvis would be running things the way they'd been running things for years, even though it was the wrong way, and then just like work themselves to death. This really doesn't make farm life look very good. When she first moves in with the Poole family, they have this eating scene that makes just eating look disgusting. They look like savages and idiots, and you know, they don't take her very seriously. It does seem very jarring. I think he's really good at showing kind of the difference and how jarring it is between city life and the country life, and I'm wondering like what his experiences were in the country. I guess you would kind of classify this as what they used to call, and I'm not being sexist or anything, this is the term they used to use for it, is what they used to call a woman's picture. And I would say this film is very similar in a lot of ways to Mildred Pierce. It's not as fun as Mildred Pierce, frankly. What happens with Mildred Pierce's offspring in Mildred Pierce is very similar to what happens to Barbara Stanwyck's Selena character in So Big, when her son grows up and becomes this rich kind of brat, more concerned with money than like actually doing a trade that he really believes in. I think Mildred Pierce plays more in extremes than So Big does, but I guess you could say So Big is almost a little more of a realistic Mildred Pierce, maybe a toned down Mildred Pierce. The vibe I get from it, even though this is based on Edna Ferber's novel, which apparently is really good. A lot of women's pictures, and I think you look at Mildred Pierce, it's like a woman who makes her own business and really becomes this strong woman through all adversity, and that really goes into even what Judy from Movie Classics was saying. Wellman, you know, when he portrays women, they're always doing a job. He doesn't really want to make a woman glamorous, and he even comments on that in his book and in his documentaries. He doesn't want to have them all dolled up. He wants them to do as much work as the men do. And I think So Big was kind of perfect for him in that way. He's not so concerned with your gender, it's just how hard you work, and if you're from a working class kind of gritty background. And that's why, like, I think him and Warner's worked so well together at the time. He knows people work and work and work till they're old and they can't do it anymore. And that's really something that's really instilled in him. He did fight in a war. He really lived a life before he came to motion picture directing, and he seems to really like stories about people who lived a life, whether they're a man or a woman. I think So Big really reflects that with the Selena character that Barbara Stanwyck played. I'd be curious to see the Robert Weiss film, which is about 110 minutes, because I feel like that could fill in a lot of the gaps, and apparently there were a lot filmed that was cut out. I didn't read too much about what exactly happened with it. The Movie Classics blog said that there were a lot of people who were credited who weren't actually in the film, so it'd be interesting to see what that footage was, and she brought that up as well, and like what exactly happened. But I think Wellman makes the best of what he can do with it, and he seems to get the film to work. I've noticed that with Wellman, even if it's a film I don't necessarily like, he seems to find a way to get it work within its own aesthetics. I kind of like how fast it moved, because sometimes epics that take, you know, that are showing a whole lifetime can take like just fucking forever, and it kind of drains you as well. And this film didn't do that as much, but it did kind of have that feel where you ever watch a great story of a film, and it feels like it's longer than it is, but not in a bad way. You're just like, that was 81 minutes? God, I felt like I went through a lifetime with that. And like in a very enjoyable, amazing way that kind of like enriches your spirit. I feel like So Big had that. Definitely has a unique 30s kind of quick feel about an epic that I kind of like. So if you have seen So Big and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to. And my next William Wellman film will be Love is a Racket. I am not sure when that's coming out. Things are a little up in the air right now, but hopefully it'll be a Tuesday or Wednesday. It might just be a random day or right after this or whatever, but the next film that I'm going to do from William Wellman will be Love is a Racket. And I hope to see you when that video goes up, and thank you for watching.